All right, here with Rod after the 49ers beat the Dallas Cowboys 19-12 in the divisional playoff game, which sets the 49ers up for an NFC championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Rod, how sweet was it to beat up on the Cowboys?
That is always my favorite victory. The Raiders up there, but the Cowboys for sure. It always is always a nice one to get. It's pretty close though. I
No,
mean,
it was
they
it was
played
a good
well.
game. It was a good game. It was a close game. I thought the teams were pretty evenly matched. Their defense, as you could tell by a lot of Shanahan's play calling, was the goal, at least it seemed to me, and we'll talk about it, was to kind of just make sure we didn't turn the ball over, because that's where they excel defensively, is when they can get those turnovers. But yeah, it was a good game. I've been telling people all week, because you've seen this happen where an athlete kind of comes out of nowhere. A comparison would be Lynn Sanity in the NBA. Jeremy Lin, who I had an eye on because he went to Harvard and he's Asian. And so I was kind of watching it, and he came in with the Warriors, and then he gets signed by the Knicks, and he has that, that I don't know how many weeks of great play it was, but Lynn Sanity takes off. And then he becomes like, yeah, he's kind of a decent journeyman basketball player. He was never the guy who he was when Lynn Sanity was at his peak, but he was a good basketball player. And so when this Brock Purdy stuff happens, the fear, I think, for someone like me who has just seen so many guys come through, is like, I don't want to get too excited, because it may turn out to be Lynn Sanity. And so this was Brock's, I thought it was his truest test. The season, how the season ended, and plus last week's playoff game, there were solid teams. I don't know if I would consider any of those teams good teams who we faced. A bunch of 9-8 and 8-9 teams, but Dallas was the measuring stick to me, because the style of defense that they play, they are looking for this guy to make mistakes. They hawk the ball. They can rush the passer. And so, to me, this was the moment of truth. How do you think Brock Purdy did in his moment of truth?
I mean, like you said, the big thing is he didn't turn the ball over, which was, like, I totally agree, was the litmus test for him, with the way they rush the passer. And they play a lot more man coverage than most teams in the NFL. And like just which one is it? Whichever one of the digs is they have.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They try to turn you over, and then shorten the game. I mean, they kind of want to do what we do.
Yeah.
And that he did very well to keep the ball safe. And there were a couple of times where he ate the ball and dirted the ball, instead of trying to make a play, which was exactly what he needed to do.
Yes.
So it was a very good performance for experience level in such a high leverage situation.
And so I got a note from our good buddy Mike Gilbert. I think it was a little bit tongue in cheek, but he's in on Purdy mania here. So he just tweeted at me. He said, "Are we done questioning Purdy yet?" And I said, "No, he's still got to win 2 more games."
Right.
And I think it's funny because, for those of us who, I wouldn't say I'm hook, line, and sinker for Brock Purdy. This was a market who was not hook, line, and sinker for Steve Young until he won a Super Bowl. Like, that's how harsh this market is on quarterbacks. And so I don't want to, I think, and you even said it great last week, you don't want to get your expectations so high to where if he doesn't reach those expectations, all of a sudden this rookie quarterback is a failure in your eyes. And that's just not the way that you can evaluate somebody like that, is to set the highest expectations. But at the same time, I want to be measured about this, and it's really going to be the team that they put out there, offensively and defensively, who set the tone so that Purdy can hit these shots and make these plays. I thought who Purdy reminded me today was Alex Smith 2011. Like, he just didn't make any mistakes. He made the smart play. There was one or two questionable passes, but everybody has one or two questionable passes. And he just played smart football. I was when they were driving late and we knew that they needed a touchdown. What I was worried about, especially after Ray, I was worried about the fumble. I wasn't worried about the interception, though. I thought because they ran the ball so strong in that second half, anytime that they did a play action or they didn't actually run, they had receivers open over the middle, and so I was really confident in that. But I was just I was a little worried about the fumble. The fumble has been, if you have been a 49ers fan for a very long time, you can go all the way back to the three-peat that was lost because Roger Craig fumbled against the Giants. You can go back to that 2011 Alex Smith NFC championship game. Kyle Williams. I think there's an Adam Walker fumble somewhere sprinkled around there. So that the fumble has been kind of the Achilles heel for us getting in these big games. And he didn't throw an interception. He got sacked a couple times, especially early. You could sort of tell. I think Dallas, the Quinn and them were just like, we got to turn this kid back into a rookie. Let's just bring boom, immediately sack like on the first play. But he didn't let that get away from him. So I was very happy about that. And first, also shout out to Shelvin, who's hanging out with us. But let's go with what my first kind of my first note here is, and I really believe this to be true. And this is kind of the matchup I was looking at. I wanted to see if we could win this matchup, which is Dak versus our defense and Purdy versus their defense, because you can't be Dak versus Purdy. They don't play against each other. But I was wondering, because we saw a very good Dak last week against the Bucs. And I was like, if we get that Dak, this game's going to be really, really close. And on the flip side, Purdy, I was wondering what Dallas was going to do against him. And I would say, you compare the two together, I thought Purdy played better against Dallas's defense than Dak played against 49ers defense.
Yeah. Well, I would say, to be fair, my concern, obviously this season as a whole, but the defensive line in particular has been a strength. And then last week, for the season, our pass rush win rate was 60%. Last week it was 39%, which I'm very concerned, because I felt, if Dak was able to stand back there and pat the ball like he was against Tampa, it could be a long day. And we got after him. We got, it. I'm not sure what the numbers will come out to be, but we heated him up. We definitely heated him up when we needed to, and I love it when we blitz. I just it's great to get the rush when we rush 4, but in those high leverage situations today, Ryan's dialed up the blitz on several occasions, and that it's we got burnt once on that, but overall we did very well. Likewise, while they heated up Brock a little bit, we did a pretty good job of protecting him. So I think, like you said, I think that's where the difference came, is the protection that we, even though they lost, when we didn't get to Dak, CD Lamb had a pretty big game.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is when you're playing a lot of coverage, these guys are so fast and the DBs can't touch them after 5 yards. There are going to be spaces out there for the receiver find room if the quarterback, has time enough to find them.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important that we get pressure.
Yes, absolutely. So I saw. I don't know if uh, Skip Bayless is very much a cartoon character. He was he was in the Bay Area for a little bit as a columnist for the San Jose Mercury News. So
Mm-hmm.
I got to read some of his writing. I've read his books on the Cowboys, and he took his Dak jersey off and he threw it on the ground, and I think he threw it in the garbage. Dak did not play well. Losing Tony Pollard hurt them, but the game was close, and it was really just about how Kyle's offense was able to control the clock in the second half, and Dallas was unable to do that. To me, that's sort of my big picture here. And maybe you mentioned Lamb, but that seemed to be Dallas's only real weapon against the Niners. So
Especially
ultimately,
after Pollard went out.
yes. What happened to Zeke? Jeez.
Yeah, what a fall. Yeah, that's that you. It didn't even seem like once Pollard went out that I figured, well, now Zeke will be featured, but not so much.
No, not
Not
at all.
so
They didn't
much.
even really try. Pollard had um he had 6 carries for 22 yards. Zeke had 10 for 26, and Dak was 4 for 22. So they had 22 rushes, but only 76 yards. And the
Mm.
Niners were 32 for 113. So there was a lot of 3 yards and 4 yard gains here for the Niners. A lot in the second half. The other thing is I was just thinking about this is if you're a Dallas fan and you look at this game and you look at back-to-back years, last year you get to the wild card game, you lose. This year you get to the divisional game and you lose. What is Jerry thinking? He already said McCarthy's not losing his job. The Niners have McCarthy's number for sure. And you pay Dak a lot of money. You got CD Lamb is great. You have this double, you have this double running back situation, and you have a great defensive line. Like, what do they need to take that next step? Because still, I thought this year's Dallas team was better than last year's Dallas team, but this year's Niners team was also better than last year's Niner team. I don't know. Are they still right in the mix, and you just kind of bring them all back next year? In the NFL, you can't really bring them all back, but how would you? If you're a Dallas fan, are you okay with how the future is, or is this kind of the limit for
I
where you think they could go?
I just don't see where the growth is. I mean, I don't see. It seems like you said, they're kind of stuck as it is. Think about making changes on the margins, but I don't really. I don't have their cap number handy, but I don't really see what they can do in terms of making like a huge splash. Um, like you say, they've got Dak that not really close yet to an extension, I don't believe. But they CD Lamb, I mean, he's a good player. I just I I don't they're clearly not in the top echelon of the NFC, and I don't really see a path to get there for them. Um, so that's a frustrating place to be. Is
Yeah.
kind of fiddling in the middle. Um, you know, uh, uh, Philadelphia seems to be like a kind of a juggernaut, and they're set up to be good for a good long while. The Giants are better, it seems. Dabo seems to have a real good grasp of things, and he's made Daniel Jones an actual quarterback. So
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting. What they do with Saquon will be something to watch. But yeah, I don't see a path to the upper echelon of the. I don't know that Jerry is one to just stand pat, but I don't really know what he can do.
Yeah, totally. So Brock ends up 19 of 29, 214 yards passing, sacked twice. So I mean, really pedestrian stats, especially with how the NFL works today. But again, he sort of Alex Smithed it. He game managered the game, and he didn't turn the ball over, which was the most important thing. Because this game was literally all about field position. And then Dak on the other side, 23 of 37, 206, 1 TD, and 2 interceptions. All right, so my next point here is about the offensive game plan, because what we saw in the second half of the season was a really explosive offense, and I saw a lot of tweets online saying, why were they being so conservative? Why are they just running so much? And I thought it was to combat a pretty aggressive Dallas defense. Like, I think there were moments in the second half where Shanahan could have pulled out the play action a little bit more than he did, but it was really about field position, and I thought he managed that whole thing perfectly. If Eli Mitchell gets out of bounds on that run, the game ends, sooner than that. But even with that small blunder, they were still able to do a good enough job in running it out. By the way, we were mentioning Zeke. They did him dirty by putting him at center at that last play of the game. That was mean, man. What the hell? This poor guy just gets blown up.
You mentioned blunders. We had a couple there at the end of the game.
Yeah,
I don't know what Armstead was doing.
Oh my gosh! had a safety. That'd have been that's the end. That's the highlight that they used in every video package just to show the domination there at the end, and he just two-hand pushes him and lets him go. I was like, what's going on here? And then the tight end Schultz stepping out of bounds, going backwards, and so the clock keeps going, and then not making that catch. Had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That was a little rough for 2 years in a row for them at the end of the game. But yeah, what do you think of the game plan? Did you think that Kyle was being a little too conservative for your taste? How did you think that they handled it?
It was clear pretty early on. I don't think it was till but they were taking the play clock all the way down. So it was a concerted effort to control the clock, and just burn the clock. And it seemed to me, and they did it really well. What was that? We had that, second half, that one drive that was, 8 minutes. It took, took us, an 8-minute drive. I mean, that eats up, the majority of the quarter. It just seemed like that was the game plan all along, was to just run plays and eat up the clock, and keep keep them from being able to kind of just tee off and rush us, which point of they started playing Micah in the box as a linebacker more so than as a defensive end, to kind of try to combat our weapons, because I mean he did a pretty good job of running down run plays, particularly from the backside. He's just so fast. I mean, he is a marvelous player. I saw, that's what fans do. They shit on him for saying stuff, talking crap or whatever. And I mean, he didn't have a really great statistical game, but I mean, he is a force. That little hump move that he did was crazy for such a small guy. He is. Poor Mac.
it kind of made me wonder if he had taken any jujitsu, because it was literally like a jujitsu move to trip the offensive lineman. I was like, oh, I see that in the UFC a
Yeah,
lot with
it
the with
was
the
crazy.
with the
He is
judo
a
judo players. I
judo.
mean, not
Yeah,
not jujitsu, the judo players.
yeah, like Ronda Rousey.
Exactly. Micah had 4 tackles and 1 pass defense and 1 QB hit. Yeah, it seemed like, it seems like every time the ball, he's just around it, and so I'm kind of surprised to see those numbers. But he was awesome. Um, the way that the Niners played that first half, I was in my head saying, okay, I think what they need to do is run the ball a little bit more, because the pass rush in the first half for the Cowboys was, Brock wasn't able to get to more than probably his second read. They were there come so quick. And then Dallas, when they scored their first touchdown, that was kind of the drive that the Niners usually do well. Short passes, move the chains, use the running game, and just, go down the field, take a lot of clock. And I was like, wow, that's what we do. We need to get back to that. They were also happy, I guess, when you have a kicker who could actually make the kicks, and you don't have to change your short game mentality because of it. Like Robbie Gould is, he doesn't have the biggest leg, and he kind of sucks on kickoffs. But man, this dude has not missed a kick in the playoffs in his career. To have that sound, just in the back of your mind, like, okay, we don't have to, if it comes, we're kicking this field goal, we're fine. And Dallas didn't have that. They had to, they were guessing fourth down. I'm sure it was like frustrating for them to go, oh my gosh, it's 4th and 5 at our own 30 something, and we can't trust this kicker, so we got to go for it. And so, constantly changing what you do as a team. And so there was that stuff, and just that problem the 49ers didn't have, but they got back to business by just wearing this team down in the second half. And in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, this is coming at some point. The Niners are going to be able to run the football. It's coming. I know it's coming. These defenders on the Cowboys are going to be tired at some point. And it did eventually happen. But it was, after watching the last few weeks of this team and seeing how explosive they were, it sort of felt a little bit like last year with Jimmy, more so than it did these last few weeks with Brock.
It's I can be a troll at sometimes. That was one of the things I said during the game, kind of tongue in cheek, is that, you know what this kind of quarterback play does? It has you trade 2 first-round picks and a pick swap to get a quarterback who can go out there and make a play. Oh, actually, we've done that already. So yeah, it's it was really, it was conservative, but I think it was by design. And I think what you want is, like you just mentioned, was like that Dallas first drive. What you want to do is kind of cash in some of those in the red zone with because if you do that, it makes it it makes it much more comfortable. But what the game plan we had today did is it just kept them on the field, and it ran up their play count. And like you say, at a certain point, the dam just breaks. I mean, if they've played so many snaps, they when you're running the ball or the ball like that, eventually something has to give, and it did. We broke them basically.
What did you think of I don't even know if it's a lack of, but Christian, Debo, mixing and matching these guys, lining them up wherever you want to line. They really didn't do that a lot. Like, there was a couple moments, I think Debo was in the backfield like on the second play of the game, and I know he got a nice carry there late, but you didn't really see a lot of that. They seemed to play like way more conventionally than I thought they would play. especially in some of those third downs. And I was like, oh, like I fully expected, they put Christian out there wide a couple times, but I fully expected them to do a little bit of like, how sometimes Kyle will just pull up a play that you're like, oh man, he's been waiting to use this thing, for this exact moment. But they just played pretty straightforward. I guess that's the biggest surprise to me, is with the creativity that they do have. They just decided like playing straightforward is really the best way for us today.
Well, Olsen kind of pointed out, and it was true that, after it seemed like Christian, got whatever nicked up with the calf or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that they were basically just using him on third downs. And, Eli was getting most of the first and second down carries. So I don't know how much that played into it. The fact that, Christian was a little banged up. I don't know, I guess we'll see. I was out, so I didn't hear the post game. I didn't hear Kyle's post game press conference, so I don't know what, or how he's feeling or whatnot. But I don't know if that played a part in it. But you're 100% right. It wasn't as exotic as it has been, the past several weeks. And then I don't know if maybe it's just because that defense is faster and more talented than some of the other defenses we've played during this stretch. So, he just wanted to be, play it button up and straightforward. And again, with an eye on, protecting Brock and protecting the ball, and not putting the ball, putting us in harm's way, where turnovers might. I don't know. I don't know, but it was noticeable that it was not as fun as it has been the past several weeks. And I guess the stakes are higher, so maybe that has to do with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about the defense here. So the pass rush I thought was solid. Dak was moving, but we didn't see the sacks that we usually go. I think we got one sack, and Nick. I think the first play of the game, Nick gets held, and I was like, "Oh, Nick's eating tonight." And we didn't really see Nick in there too much for the rest of the game. I think he was in on the one sack that they did have. He kind of helped clean it up, but I thought the linebackers played an excellent game. Save Dre Greenlaw's, penalty there on the sideline where he didn't even fight. He knew that he made a mistake there, knocking the guy out of bounds and giving the Dallas almost, I think, putting him at midfield. But Fred Warner had an awesome game. He had 9 total tackles. 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass defense, an interception, and there's one play where he was covering one of the receivers down the seam and was just like stride for stride with the guy, and it was amazing to see him today. I thought this was one of the best games I thought of the season for him.
Yeah, he was all over the place. I had him for 1 more tackle for loss, but whatever. It was great. He was awesome. And like you say, the way that he is able to drop in coverage and run with these guys, it's amazing to watch how far he's able to that's crazy. But yeah, he was great. And it just changes so much. We've got, between him and Greenlaw and Al-Shaair had a good game. I mean,
Yeah.
we are our front seven, and particularly our linebackers, they really set the tone for our defense. I mean, it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, Al-Shaair and Greenlaw both 7 and 6 tackles. Fred had 9. They were all in the top 5 on the team. And just, the one I think Dre had said something about I read a quote from Dre somewhere. I don't know if it was for this game or the last game about how, he wants to get that pick six, and he had it today, and he dropped it. He had a pick six right in his hands. End zone wasn't that far away. Dak just kind of did one of those things where he had to look at the scoreboard to see how terrible his throw was. But yeah, that was it. What did you think about the secondary? Because I guess the thing that I'm most worried about on the defense, I'm worried about Lenore getting picked on a little bit. I'm worried about Hufanga in having to pass defend. And so in the back of my mind, it's like, Mooney and Jimmy are doing a good job. But if I'm the other team, I'm like, okay, here are the spots on the field that I'm going to pick on, in order to move the chains. And those would be the two spots. How did you think that they, even though CD had 10 catches for 100 or whatever he had, they didn't let him get loose, they didn't let him shake out like he could have. Even the tight end, who's a good player, he they kind of button him up. I thought the tackling was just so good today, really just keeping everyone in front of them. But do you have any worries about secondary as we get into the harder, the two hardest games of the season, if we actually do get to play two more games?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a legitimate concern. Philly has flyers. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are formidable. And again, that's why this is going to be such a battle royale. Is our defensive their offensive line is a strength of their team. If we don't heat up Jalen Hurts, it could be a long day. Because these guys are so fast, you really can't stay with them for 3 or 4 seconds. You have to, when you're playing coverage, you have to pressure their core, your coverage. You want to have him rolling away and then have your coverage set up where you funnel him where you want him to be able to throw the ball. And that's going to be important. And I'm not a real big Exit of those guys, but I know enough to know that Philadelphia creates several problems. Number one, we don't play a lot of man coverage, but which doesn't hurt you against Philly because you really can't, because Jalen Hurts is such a threat running the ball. We saw it with today when had man across the board, it just creates so many seams for a running quarterback. Mm-hmm. So you don't play man against the Eagles, period. You just can't do it. So then it's just what kind of zone coverage are you playing? And whichever one you pick, Philadelphia has answers for it. So it's gonna be a matter of them coming up with a game plan that does the best they can to limit what Philadelphia can do. You want to be in a situation where we're dictating to do rather than them dictating what they want to do. And then I think the game plan is going to be a lot like it was tonight on offense, is just trying to play keep away. We want to try to run the ball and milk the clock and keep their offense off the field. And hopefully, if there has been a weakness that Philly defense has showed, is early in the season you could run on them. They made those signings at midseason and were immediately, in the top third in rush defense. So, that's an issue. Can we run the ball on them, and can we kind of, Brock, kind of like Jimmy before him, has shown that, that down the middle in between numbers is kind of his sweet spot.
Yep.
Get George matched up and create some matchup problems. Ayuk and just you know use our weapons to create some matchup problems and score some points and milk the clock and keep their defense out there on the field and their offense on the sideline.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do want to look at a few stats for the Eagles when we look at that matchup. But before we get there, let's talk about player of the game for the 49ers. I have two that I think are standouts. I couldn't really think of a third one, but why don't you go ahead and break down who you have for player of the game?
My runner-up is the aforementioned Fred Warner.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, basically on the heels of two plays, I picked George.
Yeah.
That catch over the middle was crazy, and then the that was just nuts. And then the penalty was a big. He was my offensive guy. So I think I said my honorable mention, but I think I'm gonna go with Fred as my player of the game, and George is my honorable mention.
Yeah, that's how I had it too. And you talk about the Kittle where he gets the penalty. It's like a Draymond move. Is like that Brock is struggling here. So let's try and get something. And it was so smart. And he had a good, I'm sure he was tripped up, but he had a good acting job
He
there.
sold it.
Sold
He
it.
sold it.
He sold it so much that the defensive back was so mad. And George just looked at him and was like, well, what do you expect me to do? Like,
oh.
Yeah, I'm with you, though. I had Fred 1 and I had George 2. I was trying to think of a 3, though. Like, Christian didn't have necessarily a great game. Mitchell was solid, but, he only averaged 3.6 yards a carry. Debo had a couple of good clutch plays, but ultimately still 4 for 45. Jennings and Ayuk had the exact same stats, 2 for 26. Ayuk had a great third down catch. Defensively, I mean, Lenore had a pick, but they also tried to pick on him a little bit. It could have been Ray, but Ray did have the one fumble. He had a great kick return that was after the fumble, and we talked about this during the season. Ray was gonna fumble at some point, like he was gonna lose one, and you just didn't want it to be in this game. And he hadn't lost one in the regular season. We hopefully we got this one out of the way and we don't got to worry about that. But I guess, I guess if you have like a third, it might just be Robbie because, Brett Maher that guy was sweating bullets and he was not having a good time. And Robbie was just like, this isn't that hard. I'm just
I think you're right. That's our third. 4 for 4. Yeah, it's Robbie for sure. I mean, he's our all-time MVP, but yeah, he's definitely honorable mention today as player of the game.
Yeah, the kickoffs are still a bit worrisome, but yeah,
the funny thing is
amazing.
The funny thing is, I don't quite know. Get back to Robbie and took that off of Mitch's plate, and it really did seem to help Mitch's punting. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't get into the head of kickers, but you could. It was a demonstrable change, and I think Mitch got a couple special teams player of the weeks.
Yeah.
Since they made that change. But to get to the end zone. I don't know if that, I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But yeah, that's clearly Robbie's he's not a spring chicken, so I don't think I think the fact that he can't get it out of the end zone I don't think it's really should be a surprise at this point. But yeah, that I don't know if that can be a problem moving forward, but it certainly was an issue. Turbulence fast.
Yeah, and I held my breath because Robbie went in there to kind of sort of make a tackle, and he just put his head down, and Robbie got flopped on. I was like, oh no, he just got trampled on. Those are legs. Those are valuable legs. So
well, and you
like
remember
okay.
when he which game was that where he got concussed and knocked out of the game trying to make a tackle?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's just that's just all bad. we don't want to see Mitch again trying to make kicks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's talk about the game. It is Sunday at noon. It's always been weird to me. We in the regular season on the West Coast, I know on the East Coast it's a little bit different, but 10 a.m., 1 p.m. without fail every week. Why is it 12? Like, why isn't it up
right?
1? Like, what's the deal?
They got me today. I missed getting my little bet in because I was thinking that it was going to be a 1 o'clock start, and I went to go place my bet, and it was off. The only thing was on the board with Niners. I'm like, wait a minute, whoa, no, that game started a half hour ago.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I don't understand, like you said, why 1, and why wouldn't that work now? I don't understand why the 12 and 3:30. I mean, but
I guess you
kind
could
of
push
silly
that.
to me.
You push that second game, and I guess it kind of goes into prime time. Maybe that's the reason, because then
I
you don't have a
guess
Sunday night game. I don't know. Who knows?
so that's 6:30. Yeah, that's 6:30 East Coast time. So yeah, it kind of floats into the prime time window for them.
Yeah,
I guess.
Oh, okay, so we talked about Eagles and some of the things 49ers might want to do. Eagles have 4 players with double-digit sack numbers. Holy cow. Like, Bosa leads the NFL, but the Eagles have like 4 out of the top like 13 or something in sack leaders, which I thought was crazy because I was looking at the overall team sack numbers, and the Niners had like 46 or something, and then the Eagles had 70. I was like, where do you get 70 sacks from? I was like, oh my gosh. But the one thing is, as you already mentioned, you have been able to run on them in the past. Now they have tightened it up a little bit, but even the Giants, in a game that the Giants were pretty much out of it for most of that game, they were able to run the ball a little bit. But I do think we're going to get a game plan very similar to the Dallas game plan. Now watch Shanahan like blow it up, and all of a sudden they're throwing the ball like crazy. But it just seems like the Eagles defense is going to play just as well or better as the Dallas defense, especially they're going to be at home. I don't know. How do you expect the Niner fans to travel here to Philadelphia? The Niner fans travel really, really well.
They really do, but I'm not sure. That Philly crowd is a tough one. That's going to be interesting. I don't know what it ended up being. I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. I don't know what it ended up being at one point during that during the game yesterday with the Giants. They were sitting at an 80% pass rush win rate. It was just nuts. They were hitting Daniel Jones on every drop back.
It's crazy.
Yeah, man. It ended up right around there for the season for the game. It's like 79%. That's nuts. So they have a real formidable pass rush, like you say. So that's going to be again, we have played, our offensive line has played sneaky well here lately, but be a concern, especially on that right hand side. With Burford and McGlinchey, you just know teams have to look at the tape and say, those guys are food. So it's going to be interesting to see, how we're able to offensively to combat that. Like you said, I mean, they got four, really good pass rushers, which is, I mean, you don't really see that much in the league where, you've got guys that, most teams have one, maybe two. But yeah, four is a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see how our offensive game plan um, accounts for that.
And they also have, they kind of have a triple-headed backfield there. Against the Giants, Gainwell went for 112. Miles Sanders went for 90. Boston Scott went for 32. So they can run the ball because their quarterback is also a terrific runner. And when I saw Dak scoot up the middle on third down, I was like, oh no, this is the 49ers kryptonite here, is because they rush the passer and they're so aggressive. And if they don't get it, here comes the up the middle and just yards for days. How does that change how they play Hurts? Do you think that they just don't blitz as much? What is the change you think that they're going to make so that Hurts doesn't get out and scoot?
Yeah, that's for sure. You can't, like, it's that blitz, necessitated man coverage, and you can't do that against Hurts. It's just, it's a no-go because he has the green light to pull it down and, just audible to himself. You're with them, you're going to see draws, you're going to see quarterback run game. So we're going to have to play some form of coverage against them, which just but that creates opportunities for them with Brown and Smith if we don't get home. So it's going to be, vitally important that we figure out how to yourself when you start blitzing against a mobile quarterback like that. So I'm going to be really interested to see what kind of game plan Ryan's comes up with to combat this offense, because it's outside of the Chiefs, it's going to be the most formidable one we face this season.
That's what I kept thinking is, the one team that the 49ers were just so overmatched against was that second half Chiefs team. And the speed, the ability for them to rush the passer is a little worrisome for me. Not that Brock has not been up to the challenge every single time. He absolutely has. It's just, again, like I said at the start of the show, the teams that we beat to sort of end the season, we're all just like, these teams are okay, but they're not world beaters.
Mm-hmm.
And Dallas was the first world beater that we played, and they got through it. But now it's like in the video game, it's like you beat Super Macho Man in Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and then you got to still beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
So that's that I'm so intrigued, and I would love to be a fly on the wall in some of these meetings with Shanahan, and just like thinking, what does he see are the concerns? What does he see are like the big picture points that the Niners have to attack? I'm sure after about 2 hours, I'd probably get bored with the minutia and everything. But I just want to hear what Shanahan thinks are the big pieces of the takeaways that he got from this Giants game and from the Eagles season overall, because it does seem like a hefty challenge. Now, It's not like Jalen Hurts has been successful in the playoffs either. Like this is still, he's still a young QB himself. So there are going to be opportunities, I think, defensively for the Niners to make plays, just like the Eagles with Brock. So I think that's going to be, probably something that Eagles fans are a little bit concerned about is, okay, like let this is playoff football. Let's see how he sees things that, maybe he's not used to seeing or he hasn't seen, or the Niners are kind of hiding things. And if they can get that pass rush. Now, Bosa, there was a moment in this game where Bosa like grabbed at his stomach. And I don't know if that was like a thing about food or eating or the abdominal issue that he had. You remember he had the abdominal issue?
He's had core issues going all the way back to Ohio State.
Yeah. So that was a little worrisome to me because it seemed like he was out of plays much more than I recognize than usual. And so I haven't seen anything about it, but that's something that I'm going to keep my eye on as far as like injury reports or little Shanahan comments about him. Cause man, they need him at full strength next week for sure.
Yeah.
I guess Big Bro was there at the game today.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this season's over, so.
Yeah, exactly. Season's over, and Big Bro got his. He was a little frustrated in their game.
Oh,
so.
Absolutely. It seems like Nick is the cool-headed one.
Yeah, exactly. Did you get to watch any of the AFC games this weekend?
I did. Cincinnati is impressive. That game, I must admit, did not go the way I thought it was going to go. I thought that the home team would get it done, but they are a good football team all the way around. Even with their offensive line issues, I guess that would be the thing as a Niner fan that I would, kind of hang my hat on if we get, not jumping too far ahead. Well, because I mean, we're at the Final Four now, and what I was gonna say, is that we're at a point in the season where there's not going to be any easy outs. Everybody's going to be, whoever you get is going to be a tough matchup. But of all the teams left, Cincinnati, I think, would be from that side. I'm not on board with the other Niner fans that are like, yeah, I want a rematch. I don't know. I don't know that I'm good. I don't need to see again.
I'm sick of watching Pat Mahomes kick our butt, man.
I don't need to see that. Cincinnati make it through. Because I think that I think we can do some things against them, not looking past the Eagles, because I think they're going to give us everything that we want, and more. But I'm confident in this team, and I think we can find a way. And if we can, and we get the Bengals again, we kind of got the Bengals franchise number, I think, in Super Bowls.
Chris Collinsworth is going to be sad. Boomer's going to be so sad.
He's gonna be sick to see the 49er helmet again. But yeah, I think next week is going to be a very exciting Sunday. There's going to be some good football played, and I'm just hoping my guys can find a way.
Yep. Not to say that I personally, I don't know who's the best coach left, right? Andy Reid is the guy who's got the ring. Shanahan, it seems like this was his best year as a head coach, and he has been improving every year. And that's kind of like the final stage for him is to win one. He's gotten to now 3 NFC title games. He's gotten to one Super Bowl, hasn't won that yet. So that's kind of like the next stage for him in his career, is the gradual next step for him is to get one. And, so I fully expect that he's got something dialed up. He's really been strong all year long. I think we look at the beginning of the season and we go, man, they had that game in Denver. They should have won. They should have, figured out a way to win that opening game. And then the pouring rain against Chicago, when you look at how Chicago turned out. But there was, I wonder if him having to go with Trey and then going back to Jimmy, like there are some things that he had to do that he probably felt really comfortable with when Brock came through, because that's the third QB. And if you're going back and forth with QBs, and Trey, inexperienced QB, so he's having to make sure that that Trey's good on the stuff that they're doing. And then you go back to Jimmy, who's a completely different QB to Trey, and so then you got to change your plays. And then you get to Brock, and Brock's kind of like a hybrid between the two of them. So I think a lot of that stuff was really good for what he does, which is find the right game plan and find the right plays. And Brock was probably at the epicenter of the things that he really liked to do. And I think that helped him get to where they are right now. So I wonder if he's just got some stuff that he's ready to unleash that for people to say, oh, look at that play design, look at that play call, the Ted Nguyen's of the Athletic and all these folks, the Benjamin Solaks who get on their little drawing board and they show us how this play worked. I have a feeling that we're going to see a couple next week. Now, will that be enough? Who knows? But that's part of the game. Also, the chess match of him, kind of unleashing what they can still do is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we will be back at least one more. We got at least one more next week. Niners play at 12. So we'll probably be after the game, pretty close to after the game is over. Unless the Jizza's coming back. Is he coming back next week?
No. I'll be here.
I'm very jealous of you, by the way. So Rod went to the Jizza. He saw the Jizza after today's game. So Jizza's my favorite Wu-Tang rapper. So I'm very jealous. But yeah, so we'll be back next week after the game. Niners, Eagles, doesn't get any better. NFC title game. Feels really good to have done this show all the way through so far. Hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to do two more, man. I am. I'm ready to do two more.
Me too. I am, and I think we're a good luck charm. So
we'll keep
it going.
Yeah, Jed should throw some sponsorship our way to keep us doing these shows. All right. So next week we'll be back after Niners, Eagles. For Rod, I am Double G. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Peace out.